Welcome everyone and thanks. Welcome everyone and thanks for being here tonight to learn how to craft your story and turn it into a powerful tool for change. Now, don't worry if you don't think you have a story, because if you're here tonight and you care enough to be here tonight, I guarantee you, you do. So we have people here tonight from 4 states. So we want to thank our partners at Conservation Voters of PA, Maryland League of Conservation Voters, New York League of Conservation Voters as well. This is the first official training, which is exciting for us, of New Jersey League of Conservation Voters' new activist program. And if you're a member of the activist program, if you've been to some of our meetings so far, raise your hand, give a shout out. We can see you. I see you, Jonathan. Yeah. So great, and we're so glad you're here. So what we'd like you to do is in the Zoom chat, please introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, your hometown, and your very favorite summer activity. So put that in the chat, please. Wow, somebody's from London. Exotic. And also on your screen, on your photo in the top corner, there's 3 little dots. And just if you could have your name, make sure your name is lined up is who you actually are. In case you're borrowing someone else's computer or something, we want to know that it's you. Terrific. Great, thank you for doing that. Well, my name is Patty Kronheim, and I'm the campaigns director here at New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. My pronouns are she, her. My hometown is Hopewell, and I'm also in transition to being Allenhurst, New Jersey, being my hometown. And my favorite activity is surfing. And now I'm going to pass it along to Kai.
Thanks, Patty, and hi, everyone. As Patty said, my name is Kai Mateo. I am the federal campaign manager for the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, the Maryland League, the New York League, and also the Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. My pronouns are he, him. I was born and raised in Oceanside, California. I now live in Philadelphia, and my favorite summer activity is, just like Patty's, surfing. And I wanted to say a little bit about what we're here to do tonight. So this training really has 3 goals. First, we want to make sure we all understand what bold action Congress must take to address climate change, environmental justice, and the need for new good-paying jobs in this moment. Then we're going to practice how to tell a really vivid story about that and why that matters to us so we can make our voices heard. Finally, we're going to record those stories so that we can share them with Congress and with our communities to make a big impact. The way we'll get that done is by following this agenda. We'll start by finishing up our intros, talking about our ground rules for how we can all work well together, talk a little bit about the Build Back Better agenda, where we are in Congress right now, talk about the strategy that the environmental movement and our leagues are following right now. We'll hear some example stories, and then we'll talk about what makes a really strong story. Then you'll practice telling a story with a partner on this call, and then you'll record your story. We'll evaluate how this meeting went and how it could go even better next time, and we'll close out with next steps. And I'm going to pass it back to Patty now for ground rules.
Great, thanks, Kai. So the ground rules are simple. These allow us to have a productive training where we can all learn and participate and make sure our voices are heard. So the first rule is make space, take space. It's also sometimes referred to as step up, step back. So if you're somebody who talks a lot, maybe this is the time to practice active listening. Or if you're someone who's shy and doesn't talk much, it's the time to step up and be heard. The other rule is get on the bike. This is my favorite. Kai introduced me to this one. So when you want to learn to ride a bike, what do? Do you listen to a podcast? Do you read a book? No, you actually have to go for it. You get on the bike, and that's what we're doing today. It's okay if you mess up. or if you fall down, because we're going to pick each other back up. And the next rule is to assume the best of intentions. Remember that we are all on the same team here. And then there are just some Zoom norms. Be ready to share. This isn't one of those trainings where you just listen like it's a podcast. This is interactive, and we're going to be working together in pairs. So if you don't show up, your partner is going to be really sad. So the other basic rule for Zoom is video on so we can see your face, we can see each other, and mute your mic so we don't have to hear any background noise that can be distracting. And please use the chat for any questions, technical questions or questions you may have. Our wonderful Molly Riley, Molly, wave your hand. Molly is part of our activist program here at LCV, and she will be monitoring the chat and able to answer any questions you have. Hi, back to you.
Thanks, Patty. So why are we all here today? We're here because of something called the Build Back Better agenda, which is President Biden's plan to respond to the COVID crisis, climate change, and really get the country on the track that it needs to be on. From our point of view at LCV, the most important parts of the program, what's being negotiated in Congress right now, and what we need to meet the needs of this moment are these top three goals. A pathway to 100% clean energy by 2035. This is long overdue, and it is absolutely the time to make this the reality in this country. The Justice 40, just by show of hands, has anyone heard of the Justice 40 before? Is this a term people, I see Carol shaking their head, Mark, great. We're so glad you're here so you can learn about this. Let's see, I'm scrolling through the windows here. Has anyone heard of it? Okay, that's totally cool. The Justice 40 is a commitment in the legislation that 40% of whatever the total climate investment is, it's that 40% of it benefits the people who have been on the front lines and have been most affected by climate change. Those are our community members in Black and Brown communities, in low-income communities that have been on the front lines of not only the COVID pandemic, but also of climate change and pollution. So this is an environmental justice commitment that we think is critically important at LCV. And finally, this is about building the country back better. We are committed to seeing millions of good green jobs. These are good paying, often union jobs in a green economy that will allow the country to get back on its feet. This is what we're fighting for in this moment, and we have an amazing opportunity to try to get it done. Back to you, Patty, for a little bit more on Build Back Better.
Great, thanks, Kai. Yeah, I just can't agree more. Build Back Better, it can be the most significant federal action on climate change, equity, and jobs in our lifetimes. And when I think of 100%, what I think of is the bold climate action that this would mean. So I think about 100% clean energy by 2035, 100% broadband access for all Americans, no matter where you live, getting rid of 100% of all the lead pipes and upgrading them so that people have access to clean drinking water. 100% also to me means being all in, right? Building renewable energy projects like wind and solar power, repairing roads and bridges to be more resilient to flooding and extreme water and the natural disasters that are getting worse and worse because of climate change. Investing in American energy innovation and really that research that we need so badly. Cleaning up abandoned mines and abandoned oil and gas wells, which there are a lot of jobs, people who already work in that industry, just doing the cleanup. And reducing pollution and improving energy efficiency in homes, schools, and childcare centers. So it's really about 100% being all in and really fixing some of our problems in a way that centers equity and helps improve our chances of fending off the worst ravages of climate change. Kai?
Thanks, Patty. So sounds good, right? Can we just see show of hands? Who's excited about getting those things done? I see Karen, Mark, Donald, Margaret's waving. She's so excited. Jonathan's got the #1. Love that. And I see Wendy, who's not on camera, is clapping. Yeah, this is exciting. This is really important. So what do we need to do about it? We're all here. We're fired up. So what? we need in this moment to make our voices heard. Bold climate action like this is popular. As I said, am the federal campaign manager. I spend my time looking at the breakdowns of voters and congresspeople across the country. And across the country, bold climate action is incredibly popular. And the support for that is not limited to one party, is not limited to one ethnic group, one location. Whether people are Republicans, independents, Democrats, they're supportive of these policy changes. And unfortunately, just because something is popular, just because something is what is needed in this moment, doesn't mean that it's going to be passed into law, doesn't mean it's going to happen. The fossil fuel industries and other groups are fighting back really hard to try to block this transformative change. I saw Jill nod like, yeah, I know that for sure. But we can make a difference. And what we can push back on all the money, all the influence of the fossil fuel industry, we can push back with people power. We can push back with our stories. We can make our voices heard so that every single member of Congress in all our states knows exactly why, to us personally, to our family members, to our community members, why this action is needed now. And maybe, just maybe, if they know the stories of Nancy on this call, and Mark, and Bailey, and Donald, maybe those stories will move them towards supporting this action and being bold and being courageous to get done what needs to get done. And that's why we're here tonight, to learn how to tell those stories, to make our voices heard, push back against our opponents, and make a difference in Congress to get this all done. So we're talking about stories. Now we're going to hear some. And I'm actually going to ping pong it back over to Patty to hear our first story.
Great. Thanks, Kai. So, as Kai said, this is about talking from our hearts and trying to reach people, because elected officials and leaders, they're just people. So, here's my story. Who am I? My name's Patty Kronheim. And when I was a little girl, I used to have this big swamp maple that was out in the front yard of my house. And I would go outside and I would sit under that tree and I would just look up, and the sunlight would come through those leaves and I'd be all surrounded by the leaves and the sunlight, the way it dapples in sometimes. And I would feel such a sense of just warmth and that I was protected and love. It was a space I could go when I was a kid that just made me feel like everything was okay. Now, fast forward to 2014, and I live in Hopewell, New Jersey, and I have land behind my house, and there's a trail, and there's a beautiful tree I love there. I guess I'm someone who loves trees. And I would walk to that tree, I'd take my dogs, and sometimes I would sit there by that tree, or it was kind of a special place for me to be a little contemplative, or just maybe make a wish, say a prayer. And that over the years, it was a very special place. And I got a letter in the mail one day, and I didn't know what this was. My neighbors all got it, but I opened it up, and it was from a pipeline company. And I was stunned because it said, all that land behind your house, well, we're going to run a pipeline through there, but don't worry about it. You won't really notice anything. It's all okay. It's going to be fine. I was just flabbergasted. How could a large pipeline company go behind my home, which had preserved land that we paid for as a state and all the taxpayers paid for? And I didn't understand how that could happen. So I called very smart people and I found out a bunch about pipelines. And Pennies was going to be coming to my town. That was the pipeline company. And they were going to have this big meeting. So I said, well, I thought I should get my neighbors together and we should go to this and we should say that this isn't okay. That we don't like this, and find out more and tell them why this isn't such a good idea and find out more about their plans. So I remember walking down the driveway with a clipboard in my hand, a pad of paper, right, ready to get people's names. And I'm walking down the driveway and I get to the bottom of the driveway and I just think, oh my gosh, who am I to do this? And I heard a voice in my head that said really clearly, who are you not to? So I did. I took that step and I knocked on all my neighbors' doors. And that was the beginning of my journey doing this work. But that's why now Build Back Better means so much to me, because I want every child, no matter where they live, to be able to sit under a tree and have that same sense of peace and joy and be able to feel that everything's going to be okay. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Patty. And can we show our love, our appreciation for Patty's story? Can we do, yeah, I love Kathy's got the jazz hands going, clapping. Yeah, I got chills. I've heard Patty's story before and it gets me every time. Thank you all so much for holding the space for Patty's story. It's a tough act to follow, but I now want to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm here tonight. So as I said earlier, I grew up outside of San Diego, California. And San Diego was a really magical place to grow up. I remember some of my earliest and best memories are sitting on the front of my dad's paddleboard just for hours when we were in the waves as he was teaching me how to surf and navigate the water, and climbing up the cliffs by the beach and counting the needles in the pine trees to see if they were Torrey pines or another species, because Torrey pines always had exactly 7, or at least that's what me and my little sister thought. And the other thing about growing up in San Diego, though, was that climate change was never theoretical there. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I was sitting in Mr. Smalley's science class, and all of a sudden there was this announcement. It kind of crackled over the speakers, and it said, all students come to the gym for an assembly. And it was the middle of the morning. It was a weird time. And when I stepped outside the building on the way to the assembly, I noticed that something that looked like snow was falling, and there was this acrid smell in the air. And I sat in the assembly and I listened to the principal, Mr. Titleman, say school is going to be canceled and we were all going to have to go home because some of us were going to have to evacuate because of the uncontrolled wildfires that were going on. And I remember pulling my little flip phone out of my pocket and trying to call my parents. And it rang and rang, both my mom and my dad, and they didn't pick up. And the sky was getting darker and darker outside. It smelled smokier and smokier. It felt like the world was ending. And I remember going into the voicemail and saving voicemails from my mom and my dad because I wasn't sure if I was ever going to hear their voices again. And I remember driving up the freeway with Mrs. Chang, our family friend, and finally getting the message from my parents saying they were okay. And it was this huge wave of relief that washed over me. But I still felt really scared. And I remember the next year in science class learning about climate change and how these fires that were getting worse every year, the first year we were out for a week, the next year we were out for 2, were caused by hotter and drier weather that was caused by greenhouse gases. And it felt like this big, scary global problem. And that really kind of made me, I was just walking around with this weight on my chest. And I remember I finally asked my mom one day, standing outside our house in the driveway, she was wearing scrubs and a green sweatshirt with turtles on it. And I said, Mom, are we doomed? Like, is climate change just going to end the world? And she sighed and she looked at me and she said, you know, this is the generational challenge of your time. When I was a kid, we thought the world was going to end with red phones and nuclear missiles and the Kremlin and the White House calling. And it didn't end. And we now think the world's going to end because of climate change, and it's up to you and your generation to deal with it. And that stuck with me. I don't remember if I said anything in the driveway, but it stayed with me. And later on, I became an organizer. and I worked on political campaigns after college. I joined one, we lost. I joined another one, we lost. And then I was working at a different nonprofit last year, and I was bored and I was frustrated, and I got a phone call from my friend Rudy, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to go work on the presidential campaign, and I'm building a team. Will you join us?" And I immediately Googled how fast quit job, no notice, because I knew I was going to go join that fight. And we we fought really hard, we organized, and we made a difference, and we won. And then the Senate flipped. And this year, I've got the amazing opportunity to join with this team with activists like all of you to really meet that generational challenge that my mom talked about in the driveway. And that's why Build Back Better matters so much to me, so that kids in the future can look back on my generation and say that they met the challenge, and didn't let them down. So thank you all for holding the space for my story, for Patti's story.
And let's give it up for Kai here. Kai, jazz hands are raised for thank you, Kai. That was really inspiring and feel your passion.
Thank you, thank you. So we're now going to take a huge step back and think about the stories we just heard. So in the chat, I want everyone to take their hands that they were just giving us jazz hands with, throw them on the keyboard, and answer this first question. As you think about Patti's story, as you think about my story, what images, details stick out? What can you see from those stories? Let us know in the chat. Walking in the woods, sounds like Nancy remembers that. Smelling fires, seeing the tree leaves in Patti's story, Liz says. What else? What images and details really stick out to you? Being in the ocean, snow in San Diego. Okay, these are really great details. You are super sharp. You were picking up the details in our stories. Next question, when did your heart wake up? When did you feel something listening to these stories? Sounds like seeing the pipeline really moved Nancy. The feeling of not knowing whether I would hear from my parents because it felt like the world was ending. When else did you feel something in these stories? When my mom said it was going to be my challenge, yeah, my mom has a way of doing that. Yeah, and I see Karen saying that this related to their own experience. Last question here before we move on. What do you think we value? What do you think we care about? You just met us. We just told stories for a couple of minutes, but what do we care about? What really, really matters to us? Family, home.
And I'm seeing here also with Donald, acknowledging Donald. Yes, Donald, different stories and knowing your audience matters with Chambers and Commerce and thing. Maybe a story about not having a job, or that kind of a story would be more impactful. So yes, audience matters.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you for making that point. Good point.
Absolutely. Audience matters, moments matter. And Jill saying care about human life and how climate is impacting that. So Jill, I'm going to pick on you, and I'll invite you to come off mute. Imagine, Jill, if instead of telling a story, I had come up here and Patti had come up here and said, we care about human life. We care about the climate and how it's impacting life on the planet. How would that be different than if we told the stories the way we did?
Well, it's not personal. You're not telling your story. I mean, I could say the same thing. Oh, I'm passionate about the environment, and I'm passionate about humans and animals that live on the environment or live on the planet. But I'm not telling my story. So I haven't engaged you. I haven't grabbed you, and like when Patti said, she walked out with the clipboard, in her driveway, she said, who am I to do this? And every time she says that, even my saying it right now, it gives me goosebumps. And then she says, well, who am I not to? Hell yeah, girl, do it. That's what I said. And then, Kai, when you said, I didn't know if I'd see my parents again. And I have saved voicemails of family members that I've never seen again. I still have them on my phone to this day. So that is so personal to me. So, and again, when you say to yourself, well, who am I to do this? It takes one person, that one domino that hits all those other ones. You need that one domino. And then you have that domino effect. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jill.
You're welcome.
Just lifting up two amazing things I heard in Jill's response. First and foremost is that stories, and the reason you are all here tonight, is that they're unique. Each of us has a whole host of experiences that are true only to us, that bring us to where we are in life, that make us who we are, and give us the power, the motivation that we have. And then also, Jill said, you wouldn't feel connected to someone if they didn't tell a story. But I'm guessing that the stories we told allowed folks to feel a little bit connected to us. And that's the power of narrative. That's what we are here to talk about tonight. So that connection comes from telling stories about values, about things that really matter to us, our deepest commitments. And the reason values matter so much is they affect our emotions. And sometimes in politics, in organizing, in campaigns, we go to this place that's really centered on the head. We say, this policy issue and this many dollars and that many votes, and that's important. But science has shown us, our religious traditions have shown us, years of experience have shown us that you need to speak the language of the heart in order to call people to action as well. There's actually research done by a philosopher named Martha Nussbaum on people who've suffered damage to their amygdalas, an emotional center of the brain. And I have a question for the group. So when asked to make, when presented with options, what do you think these people can't do when they've experienced that damage to the emotional center of their brain? They can reason lists of options all day, but what do you think they can't do? Let me know in the chat. Who has an idea there? Folks are on the right track. I think Bailey, I think you're on the right track here. Bailey, can you come off mute and say, without emotion, without the ability to really feel, what can't we do?
We can't distinguish the difference between one emotion or another. It's flat, it's the same. So yeah. A fire versus, trees, they won't know the difference. Yeah. It's all the same to them.
Absolutely. And when confronted with a decision, do I go this way or do I go that way? Those people can reason lists of pros and cons all day long, but because of the reasons Bailey's talking about, they can't make a decision. And this is because emotions motivate our actions. Pamela's mentioning this in the chat right now. And stories speak the language of emotion. And ultimately, that's what we're after, connecting with the heart so that people will take action. So how do we do that? Go off and tell stories. How do we do that? The way to tell a moving story is to think about the building blocks. And the building block of a great story is a moment, a particular time and place. So you heard these in my story and in Patti's. We were in, let's take Patti's story as an example. In the first moment that Patti brought us to, where were we? Let me know in the chat, where were we? Does anyone remember? Under the tree, Bailey, exactly right. And what details do you remember from that story? We were under a tree. What could you see? What could you hear? What did you feel? Yeah, Bailey, Patti was looking up at the sky through the leaves. And the reason telling really specific moments, a specific time, a specific place matters a great deal is that it allows us, through something that scientists have discovered called mirror neurons, to experience a little bit about what someone else is going through. So even though we weren't under the tree with Patty in that moment, we could connect with it. And Margaret says in the chat that Margaret felt comfort as well, just as Patty as a little girl did under that tree in that story she told. That's the power of telling a really specific moment. What do you see? What do you hear? What are your senses doing? And what's going on in your heart? Going back to the power of those emotions. So we've talked a lot about what stories are and how moments, getting really specific, makes the story come to life and motivate action so that other people can relate to it. Let's talk a little bit about what stories are not. Let's do a little contrast here. So stories are about us. As we heard earlier from Jill and from other folks, these are our unique stories. Only you can tell your story. The flip side of that is your story's got to be about you. It's got to be about why you, Nancy, and why you, Tammy, why you, Donald, care about this, not why someone else does. These are also public stories. We all have a wealth of stories that make up our experience. These are ones that we're ready to share publicly. I sometimes think of this as an analogy. If you imagine a house, your house, and you're going to have some guests over, you might show them into the living room, into the kitchen, into the dining room, but you're probably not going to go upstairs and say, let's rummage around in my dirty laundry. The stories we're telling are those living room stories, those kitchen stories, the ones that matter and are real to you, but that you're ready to share with other people. And these stories are values-based. These are about what makes your heart wake up. This is about what you care. Stories are not, on the other hand, stories about other people. You'll notice in my story, in Patty's story, there were other characters. My mom was in mine, my dad was in mine, people from the pipeline company were in Patty's, but the stories were about us, not about those people. And these were stories, the flip side of what I was saying about the public stories is that these weren't private stories. These were stories that I was ready to tell all of you, Patty was ready to tell all of you, and this is the really important one. These were not policy pitches. This wasn't a 10-point plan with 4 steps after that, with a budget, with a lot of graphs. This was a story. This had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's what we're here to practice tonight. So we're going to take a moment here before we get into practice to just take a deep breath. And for that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Patty.
Great. Thanks, Kai. So we are going to be asking you, to share your stories and work on that. But before we do, I just, want to give us all a moment to ground ourselves, so you have the time to sort of reflect a little bit, so you're prepared to go into a room and share a story that you'd like to share. So to help with that, and I wanted to share something personal. When Kai and I told our stories, we didn't write them out. These weren't drafted and crafted. We just tried to put ourselves back in those places, let ourselves feel, and then be willing to share what we felt and let the story just flow. So it was, neither one of us was exactly sure how these stories would come out at the end, but it was the feeling part of it that we allowed ourselves to do that made them impactful and allowed us to be there and visualize those moments and share them with you. I did leave out the Oreo cookies, but I used to steal and eat under the tree. But at any rate, so what I'd like everyone to do now is just because, everybody gets nervous, like, oh no, I'm going to be asked to do something. Well, don't be nervous. Just whether you're sitting or standing, just feel your feet on the floor. And if you're comfortable, just close your eyes. And take a big breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Let yourself take another one. And just breathe quietly for a minute. And I just want you to first of all, have faith that you do have a story, that there is something that you care about. This isn't about getting it right or being perfect. This is just your story, and that's enough. So just take a moment and ask yourself the question, what do I care about? and see what comes up for you. It could be your family, children, parents. It could be your community. It could be something in nature. Maybe even a memory will come up for you. Whatever comes up for you is absolutely perfect in this moment. Okay, when you're ready, open your eyes. And we'll listen to Kai.
Thank you, Patty. I feel very grounded right now. So what we'll do now is we're going to try it on. And as Patty said, we all have stories, and it's okay that this is a rough draft. Remember our ground rules. We're just getting on the bike today. We're just giving this a shot, and it's okay if you're wobbly. We're here to support one another as we practice this skill. So what's going to happen is you're going to go into a breakout room. There'll be another person there. You'll have a partner. This might be someone who's an old friend of yours who you came with to this call, or it might be someone totally new. Introduce yourself, say hi, and then figure out who's going to go first. The first person will tell their story of why they care about climate change, clean energy, environmental justice, or good jobs. And then you'll have about 2 minutes to do that. And then you'll have 3 minutes for the person who was listening to respond, to let the storyteller know what resonated, what moments really popped for them. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? And then to ask questions. And here it can be really tempting to want to jump in and say, oh, Molly, I think you should do this differently. And maybe tell, instead of talking about your grandma, maybe talk about this. Don't do that. The storyteller knows their story. They know what's true to them. Ask them questions. So instead of telling them what to do, say, I was curious about this part. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Or when in particular did that happen? What did you see? What did you feel? Try asking those questions. After 3 minutes of that, you'll switch roles. So the person who was responding will tell their story for 2 minutes. And then in 3 minutes, the first storyteller will respond. And we'll put these directions in the chat so you have it in writing. It's not like you had to memorize that. So.
And Kai, you're going to be giving, don't be flipped out when you have prompts. There will be some timing prompts for you all as well so that everybody stays on track.
Thank you for that reminder, Patty. One other thing to note, especially if you're meeting someone for the first time, just take a note of their name. Make sure you're really getting to know each other and remember your partner's name. But this is the prompt. This is what we're trying to tell our stories about. So when did you, again, this is not someone else, this is you on this call, learn to care about climate change, clean energy, environmental justice, or good jobs? And the way you'll tell that story is bring us into the moment. When? What day was it? What time was it? Where were you? What was going on in your 5 senses and your emotions? Paint that picture for us. And then here is what we'll do in the breakout rooms. I just went over this and I'm putting it in the chat, but briefly, 2 minutes to share your story, 3 minutes for questions from the person who is listening, and then you'll switch roles. So we'll, those directions are all in the chat. And I think we're ready to open our breakout rooms. So,
yeah, I think so. We're gonna really love to hear from folks. We asked you to remember the names of the people in your room. So what we'd like you to do in the chat is if you heard a really good story, we'd like you to write it in the chat. Write the person's name in the chat. Let's see. All right, so Carol, Tammy says Carol, or says Maggie, Tammy stands, Bailey is a good story. All right. A lot of good stories. Okay, so it's like choosing your favorite favorite child. I'll never tell. Um, so someone says Bailey has a good story. All right, so Bailey, if you're willing to tell your story, we'd like to take you off mute. There you go. Great. We'd like to take you off mute, and we'll give you 2 minutes because they're like elevators, elevator speeches. We'll give you 2 minutes to tell your story. Kai's going to do a countdown. So he's got that, and you can share your story with everyone here. You ready? Bailey, you ready?
Oh no, did Bailey freeze?
Froze.
Well, my name is, yes.
Okay, he's ready. Great.
Can we clap it up for Bailey? Can we show our
Okay,
Yeah.
let me-
Brave Bailey.
this smell emanating from a couple of blocks from where we were riding, and we are like, what was that? What's that smell? And it smelled like a burning of like a rubber tire. So we continued to bike along a little further, and we noticed that the park that they had built was built on top of a sewage treatment plant. And we just thought that that's a little strange, just smelling that smell on a hot summer day. And let me tell you, New Jersey could smell it. That's how bad the smell was. So this was my first introduction to environmental justice back in 1985. And we just knew something was wrong. And it's a beautiful state park. But how did this sewage treatment plant get put into our community and to appease us, have a state park built on top of it? So that was my first introduction to environmental justice. I continue and I'm very passionate about community, clean spaces, clean air, and clean water. And that's what I've been doing for a living for the past 9 years at We Act for Environmental Justice. We focus on good jobs, community spaces, clean air. We also have, just like tonight, I'm telling my story, we let community members tell their story. That's it. I don't want to do any more.
All right. Thank you so much. Everybody give it up for Bailey. Brave and went first. And amazing job, Bailey. Just really, really amazing. Okay. So how about Melinda? Melinda, you were nominated by Mark, and he actually wrote a lot about your story. So I think I was,
Okay.
Okay, Mark, that's going to count you down. What?
Oh, I was just saying, let's clap it up for Melinda. Let's show our love.
Melinda, yeah.
So I did more of a recent story, a story that kind of keeps me in I want to say the game, when maybe despair sometimes can overtake. I do have stories probably for each one of these. Climate change, environmental justice have been eye-opening stories, but they're all different. This one is most recent. I live in the Scranton, Pennsylvania area. I'm affiliated with Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light, a climate change group. And I was driving up during COVID to where all the big box stores are. And I hadn't been up there for quite some time. I was one of my first journeys out. And as I was going up there, I had somewhat of a history because I teach some of this, of the mountain being contested when these box stores went up, the Lowe's and the Home Depot and the Walmart and the Target. It's that, the art stores and whatnot. But they were all somewhat nestled into this mountain that still had quite a lot of forest. But as I was approaching this one day, some months ago, I could smell like fresh cut wood. And I was thinking carpentry, there's building going on. And as I round the corner to go up the hill to the Lowe's where I was going, I saw the rest of the mountain completely clear cut. I mean, every single tree was just down on the mountain. And this is a place where you could drive up and you could see wildlife, you could see eagles, you could see hawks, you could see, and it was just a comfort to your eyes in the midst of a box store mountain that you could still see wildlife and see trees and feel connected. And I just saw it and I could feel the tears coming down my face, the rage rising from my deepest depths, and just asking how, why, what's the point? How did this happen without anybody knowing? I went into the lows with my tears and saying, what's this? Nobody knew, person after person, we don't know. We just watched it. And I just continued smelling that smell and looking at those trees again, just strewn all over the weeks to come. They put them into piles, they cut some of them, prepared them, and it's still actually very unclear, this private land, what is to be done with it. In fact, all I could learn was that there's actually no real clear plan, but hopes for development. And every time I have this mixture of rage and despair when I go up there. I'm watching Kai's like countdown.
All right, good. That's good.
Like,
Thank you, everybody. Let's give it up for Melinda. Amazing, amazing. And both stories really had moments, right? Bailey's story, Melinda's story, there were moments, right, where they felt something, where they smelled something, where they saw something. So fantastic, fantastic job, guys. So Kai, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So what we're all going to do now is take the next step with our stories, which is to record them so that we can share these with our members of Congress, with our communities, to keep building the power of this movement, to make sure we have big, bold action accomplished at the federal level as soon as possible. So I'm going to walk you through step by step how we'll record these stories. So I just put in the chat 4 links, one for each of the states that we have represented here tonight. So if you are in Maryland, go ahead and click on that top link, New York on the second link, or New Jersey or Pennsylvania, go ahead and click on that link. And that should automatically open up another page on your computer in your internet browser. If that happens, if you see a website that says, if you're in New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, or in Maryland League of Conservation Voters, that's great. Just pause for 10 seconds. Just hang out there for 10 seconds. If you tried clicking on that link, let's just do a quick check here, actually. Just raise your hand on the Zoom so I can see who was able to click on the link and open up that page. Let's see. See Lori, who else? Margaret, Karen, it's raising. Kathy, Melinda's, okay, great. So
if you can't, you can put it in the chat. If you can't click on the link,
yeah,
put it in the chat.
And I'll drop the links in the chat one more time. Go ahead and try clicking on those. But if that doesn't work, don't worry. You can try you can go to your internet browser. So whatever you use, Google Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Safari, click on that, open up a new page, and then using your mouse, select the link in the chat for your state, copy that into your browser, and go to that page. So we'll just take about 5 seconds for everyone to get to their page. And when you're seeing a form that is for story collection, it will say your state on the top, then it will say tell your story, and it will ask for your name. When you're seeing that, just give me a thumbs up on camera so I know we're all together. See a thumbs up from Lori, thumbs up from Jill, Margaret. Looks like Nancy and Karen are getting there. thumbs up from Tammy, thumbs up from Bailey, Kathy, and Jonathan. Okay, great stuff. So when you see this form, the first thing we'll ask you for is your name, your email, your occupation. Type in all of those answers. So just keep scrolling and go ahead and type in all of those answers. Oh, sorry, I just clicked on the link myself, my mistake.
These, as you know, we're doing this with 4 states, and there are organizers in your state. So whatever state you're in, there are organizers in your state, and they are, going to be around after you do this. They will get these and see them, and this isn't just going off into the ether and you'll never hear from anybody again. I mean, this is the beginning of a relationship, so don't worry about getting things perfect. It's just about showing up.
Very well said, Patty. And I'm seeing some folks are having trouble with the Pennsylvania link in the chat. I and the people on our tech team in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, we all work together on the same team. So if you're having trouble with the Pennsylvania link, try the New Jersey link, because it will wind up with the same group of people as Patty just said, and we can follow up with you that way. So go ahead and give that a shot. If you're having trouble with the Pennsylvania link, try the New Jersey one. But for everyone else, go ahead and scroll down, type in your answers, and then when you've done that, let's see, just raise your hand on the Zoom so I know we're all in the same place when you've been able to type in your name, your email, and all of those things. Just let me know when you're there. Lori's there, Margaret. Adrian, you kind of raised your hand and then put it down, but we're good. Okay.
You can also use the little reaction tab and put a thumbs up or something, a reaction too.
Yeah.
If you're not on screen, if we don't see your face.
Well said. Thanks, Patty. I see Jill giving us the reaction. Cool. Okay. So once you've typed in those answers, you'll see below that, if you keep scrolling down, a black box with a blue box on it that says record camera or record video. Go ahead and tap on that blue video camera button. And then you'll go ahead and if a box pops up that says you need to allow access to your camera and microphone, this is just so we can record your story. Go ahead and click allow. And then when you tap on that blue box, once you've clicked allow, it'll say 3, 2, 1, and then it's action. Just go ahead and tell your story. So what we'll do is we'll take about 5 minutes for everyone to try telling their stories, recording it, and then we'll meet back here in the Zoom. So just stay in the Zoom, try telling your story on these forms, and then we'll talk about how to submit.
And Kai, if they don't like it, is there a do-over button that they have that pops up? It will say.
It's funny you should mention that, Patty. Why, yes, Patty, there is. There's once you finish recording your story, you finish your story, you tell your beautiful moment about why you care about these important issues, click on the screen again, and it will say, a confirmation will pop up. Do you want to do it again, or are you ready? And when you're ready, you can.
And there's some good questions. Do they need to unmute? No, Zoom is a different link than this, so you don't need to unmute your Zoom. This is separate from Zoom because it's a different. I don't believe you need to unmute.
So I can jump in here. Don't unmute on Zoom. What we'll do though is we'll all stay quiet on the Zoom for the next 5 minutes so we don't hear background noise. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll help you out in the chat. If there are other issues, if it's a really big problem, we can follow up with you after the training, because we really want you to be able to record your story if you'd like. But for now, we'll take 5 minutes of quiet time for people to record their stories. All right, everyone. We are going to go ahead and come back and wrap up the meeting. Thank you so much for trying to record your stories. If you were able to record them now, that's great. If not, no worries. We will be following up after this training, and the links will still be live so folks can record them. And we'll definitely look into that issue with the Pennsylvania link. So not to worry if you weren't able to record your story, and thank you so much if you were. So I'm going to pass it over to Patty one more time to close us out.
So great. Thanks, Kai. So we'd like everyone to put 3 things into the chat. What are you taking away? What is the key point, the key lesson that you got from tonight? That's number 1. Number 2, what worked well? And number 3, something to do even better next time. And I could take bets on this one, but something to do even better next time. So those 3 things. What's your big takeaway? What do you think worked really well? And what do you think we could improve upon? And just put that right in the chat. All right. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Nancy. That's it wasn't so difficult with guidance, something that might seem scary and big. Maybe it wasn't so much. Yeah, heads up about the recording. Yes, that is a very, and clearly this is the first training that we've done this at New Jersey LCV, that we've done this particular format. So we'll get the bugs out. We'll definitely get the bugs out. Okay, thank you, Lori. Great, these are great points, everybody. Really appreciate it. You all like working together, which is always great. Always great to see and hear. And in terms of working together, I just want to share also that New Jersey LCB Activists, we are a new program. We're expanding statewide, really excited. And Molly's going to put in a chat if you want to get involved. We have a link, and you can go to the survey that it pops up on that and let us know more about you so that we can really help cater actions to what it is you want to do and help connect you with other activists. And there are a bunch of activists who are on this call. There was Jill and Adriana and Jonathan and some allies as well. So there's just some great folks, and we're building the program. So you can go to the site that Molly Riley put up, which is the Survey Legend site, and let us know more about you. Great.
And that's for New Jersey folks, right, Patty?
This is for New Jersey folks. Yeah. Okay, I'll take everybody.
If you're in another state, we have another next step for you.
Yeah, and this next step is for everyone. That was just the New Jersey step. That's for New Jersey folks, or for folks who live in New Jersey, if you want to share it with them and you want them to do the work that, experience what you've been beginning to experience with us. That'd be great. Thank you, Kai. And then as for next steps, we want you to know that in about 2 weeks, on the 22nd of July, we're going to be doing a training. Kai and I are going to be doing a training with our very own Michelle Peel, who is our communications genius here at New Jersey LCV, and she's going to be teaching how to write an effective letter or op-ed, letter to the editor. And she's had years of experience with this, and she's really a whiz, and we're really excited about her presentation. So we're going to put that link in. It's going to be a Zoom meeting. So Molly, if you could put that in. And we're also going to be sending out a letter to everyone who attended. We'll send out an email to everyone who attended here. So you'll get it in an email, and it'll be on our website as well, under events. So you can see upcoming events. So we'll be putting it on there as well. But that should be a really great training. So it's also how to tell your story, in the written word, and Michelle will get us through that, which will be fantastic. So if you didn't record your story, you can use the links in the chat, as Kai said, and in the email. You know, we certainly will be following up with you all, and you know, being able to get back to you about the stories, because the goal is obviously these stories are going to go somewhere, and we're going to be able to share them with your elected officials so that you know, you can really make a difference. And I want to thank, you know, I want to thank all of you for showing up tonight. Showing up is always, give yourselves a big round of applause, because you showed up, and showing up is really the most important thing to start with. I want to thank Kai for his, you know, amazing storytelling workshop and his leadership on this. So thank you, Kai, and all of our other states, Maryland, New York, and Pennsylvania, and Molly for doing the background support, and the rest of the staff at LCV for their support. And we just want to, you know, keep showing up. We will be in touch with you. This is a summer-long program. We've got a lot of things we're going to be doing. Storytelling is one part of it. We're going to be really, you know, looking to have events and all kinds of things. So stay in touch. We will stay in touch with you. And thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your stories with us tonight. Have a beautiful evening.